Welcome to the HR Think Tank, a podcast that uncovers the power a trusted workforce has on team performance, culture, and morale. We gather insights from experts, business leaders, and HR professionals to help you lead your team. Here's your host, Kai No, CEO and co-founder of Verify Now.
The journey to leadership is unique for each person. Our family background, education, and life experiences impact how we see the world. On this episode, we chat about the role of authentic leadership in creating a culture of innovation. Our guest today is Ajay Bhatia, Managing Director of Carsales Australia, an ASX 100 company. If you've ever purchased a car, you'll likely know about carsales.com Limited, as they're the largest online automotive, motorcycle, and marine classifieds business in Australia. Ajay has almost 20 years of executive leadership experience. During this time, he's held several technical and commercial leadership positions, ranging from GM Commercial, Product Director, and Technology Director to CIO. In 2015, Ajay was awarded the Australian CIO of the Year by CEO Magazine Limited. And as our very last episode for 2021, we're so lucky to have him here with us today. Welcome to the show, Ajay.
Thank you, Kai. Glad to be here.
Okay, so Ajay, it's been awesome to get you on the show. We've been looking forward to this podcast episode for a little while. You know, you've got an amazing background. You've got an awesome story, and I'm hoping that you can share some of that with us on today's episode. So, first thing is, you came to Australia here in the 1990s to study. I'm hoping we can hear a little bit about your origin story, but can you also tell us about why you chose Australia as your study destination?
Yeah, no, thanks, Kai. I came to Australia in December of 1992, and I guess the story was really, I was a little bit lucky. Didn't come here just as a student. My mum and dad got permanent residence. They were part of skilled migration scheme. Australia needed teachers, math teachers in particular, and my mum was a math teacher, so came along here with my mum and sister. My dad sort of followed a little bit later. He had this fascination with laid-back lifestyle and what Australia offered and so on. And so I didn't really make the decision. He made the decision. That was the reason we came here. And, upon arriving here, I did year 11 and year 12 here in 1 year from a tech. Not from a regular school, because a tech was where you could do it in 1 year. So I did it in 1 year. I'd done some of it already in India, but I had to repeat some of it because it's just what you do when you're a migrant. You come here and you get into the system. So I did all of that. And, I remember I used to live in a place called Ashfield in Sydney, and the tech that I studied at was Dover Heights. And I didn't have a car. So it was a train from Ashfield to Central, then a train from Central to Bondi Junction, then a bus from Bondi Junction to Dover Heights. And in 1.5 hours, I used to eventually get there for trying to do 2 years in 1 year. The classes were from 9 to 9, but it meant that I left home at 7:30 and got home at 10:30. I think they gave us a bit of a break on a Friday where we finished at 5, and then on Saturdays I worked in Pizza Hut. So, that was my first year in Australia, but it was good that it started with so much of hard work that it just, everything seemed easy afterwards.
Yeah, and clearly you were committed enough to your study, because, for some people, traveling an hour and a half to do anything is a big ask, let alone do that and then study for the whole day and then come back. So, Ajay, how has your experience, your migrant experience, impacted how you approach entrepreneurship and leadership?
I mean, my migrant experience firstly started with just, you are given what you're given. You're dealt a hand when you're born in terms of how intelligent or not intelligent you are, whether it's your IQ or EQ or anything. And yes, you can do a few things to improve it, but that's your hand, right? The things that you can do about it in terms of input is hard work. And a lot of the migrants, when they come here, similar to my story, you don't come here in very privileged circumstances, or you don't start in very privileged circumstances, which means you do things that you wouldn't have done in the home country that you came from. But now you're here, you feel obliged to work harder than everyone else, and you feel like, I knew I would have had to work harder than everyone else. That was my premise. And I think I did do that. I mean, I did very long days. So Hard work's probably one of those things that I learned. The other thing that I learned was persistence. If I believe in something, I persist, and the persistence genuinely has paid off for me throughout my life. Hard work and persistence are probably two things.
So I wanted to talk about your career, and particularly the early stages of your career. You know, you've worked for some well-known brands, and you're currently the Managing Director of Carsales Australia. But can you talk us through some of the earlier challenges or some of the key challenges you faced in the early parts of your career? And how did you overcome that?
Yeah, so I mean, a few very interesting things, right? So one of the things was choice of university once I passed the school part of it. And pretty much UTS ticked the box for me because UTS had what they used to call the sandwich course. Wasn't really sandwich making skills taking me back to Pizza Hut, but was more about work and study sandwiched together. So my first year was full-time study at UTS. Was pretty standard uni life type stuff is how it started, playing pool and all of that sort of stuff down in the basement of UTS main Broadway building, and trying to study as well while you're doing all of those things and getting a bit distracted as well. But then over time, I met some of really interesting friends, and we all started to go, well, there's computer networking happening all around us. And computer networking, I think this was in 1994. Computer networking was starting to become the thing, and it was, and all of the offices wanted computer networks and so on and on and on. So one of the guys said, I know how to do computer networking. Let's form a company and go and find some business, and let's do that. So we all joined together, 4 of us, and we started a company called iSystems. My first year earnings were $44,000. I still remember it. And that was on the back of iSystems. I think we each earned 44 each. And that was just the profit of the company. And, I did some software writing for some business and so on. So that was the start of thinking in a more entrepreneurial sense for me, right at the start of university. And then I discovered from the second year, I got an internship in Telstra in their Parramatta office, writing some software for the rollout of SMS into Australia. And SMS was being rolled out into Australia back then. So I was writing some supporting software to roll that out. And it was really interesting. We used to go into this room where, all the mobile, probably lots of radiation was there too. I used to go in there and I used to feel a bit weird. I don't know why, but I used to feel a bit weird in that room. But it was a fascinating room filled with really fascinating engineering devices and stuff that Telstra had imported from the US that was cutting edge. So it was quite a privilege to work on it. And that sort of got me hooked onto this thing is really interesting. I actually maybe want to do work full-time rather than study full-time. And then down the line, I decided very quickly to start full-time work, and I made my study part-time. And when I graduated from university, I had, I don't know, I can't remember exactly, but maybe 5 years experience. It took me longer to graduate from university as a result, but I had 5 years experience.
Yeah.
And that became my experience when I did lots of jobs here and there. And it was a bit of, this company and then that company and all of that sort of stuff. But that was my software development career.
AJ, how did you, I guess I'm trying to explore is that the breakthrough moment from sort of more junior frontline entry roles. How did you then propel yourself to the executive management level? Yeah,
so one of the jobs that I did alongside UTS was working at Railway Infrastructure Corporation, and I was doing some software for them, some programming for them, trying to bring their sort of old systems into the web. And then I was a contractor there, and the the manager there sort of encouraged me to do a little bit of project management on the side as well. So I just started doing a little bit of that. Then I realized after my student life that I needed a full-time job rather than this chop and change. So I went to a company called Aspect Computing, and I stayed there eventually for 5 years. For a while, I was a Microsoft certified trainer. I used to train other people how to program. And for a while, they also used to put me on consulting gigs, sort of send me out to companies where I'd do work for the companies. So I did a mix of training, mix of software development, mix of project management. And then eventually I got sick of being contracted out and not building a team. And something inside me missed the continuity of a team. And that's when I went to Fairfax Digital, where I eventually spent 5 years. Yep. And that was my first management job. I started there as a technology manager for drive.com.au, like a division of Fairfax Digital. Very quickly then, I think was within a year of me being there, the product director there left to somewhere else. And my manager, who was the general manager of that division, I asked the manager and I said, his name was Michael. I said, Michael, why don't you just give me a go? Let me do the product management as well as the technology management and if I don't work out, then you can just hire someone else. And by the way, don't pay me anything extra. I'm not after money. Just want to, contribute with product development. So I sort of made it a no-brainer for him. And he took a risk on me. And that's, by the way, one of my lessons is you should make it a no-brainer when the opportunity arises and not focus on the short term. Because eventually, if you focus on give me a pay rise, this, that, eventually your market rate is your market rate. It always realigns. You don't even have to ask for it. Yep. If you don't ask for it, there is usually a delay, but it obviously aligns still, right? So I got that opportunity. Then they just continued with me in that sense of product and tech. Then I got an opportunity within the business Fairfax owned a business called Country Cars. And they said, this business is not doing what we expected it to do. We need someone to fix it. I put my hand up again. I said, well, how about you give me a chance? And I spent a bit of time in Orange, which is west of Sydney, past the Blue Mountains. I spent a bit of time there, turned that business out from a loss to a profit. And that was my first commercial role. Then the next time the opportunity came, we said, we need someone to champion what is known as display sales for that business. I said, why don't you try me? So I did that for a year, and my first budget there was $7 million of sales. My budget was $6.5 million, so I beat it by $500,000. But it was small, but so I ended up with this general management experience of Country Cars, product management experience, technology management experience, sales management experience. And then you can understand that in that 5 years, I wasn't just technology. I was sales. I was product. I was technology. I was the whole lot, right? And GM too. So that meant that I started to experience all the leadership challenges that everyone experienced, and started to question myself on how do I work through this and how do I work through that. And that requires then, some of it is mentoring, some of that is learning through books, some of that is courses. So a combination of all of those things was done. And the next part of my journey is partly entrepreneurial, partly corporate, but I decided to join a startup called Carsales. Back then it was a startup. Yeah. So, Greg Roebuck was the founder of the business. There were a lot of executives there, but it was pre-listing, and Greg wanted to list the business, and he wanted to strengthen the executive team before he listed the business. So I came in as part of that. I became the CIO of the company. The company was fairly small back then compared to what it is today. So, I sort of call it, it was a couple of $100 million worth, and now it's worth $7.5 billion. So that's been a really good journey. And over the last 12 years in car sales. Again, I've had probably 4 different jobs, so I've changed jobs every 3 years.
Let me ask you, AJ. So, just in terms of the advice that you're offering to people who are, emerging leaders or at the cusp of executive management, 2 things really stood out to me. You said, make it a no-brainer, make it easy for your manager or leader, whoever it is, to accept the offer that you're making. It's not always about money. And the second part is to think really long-term. Like some of these roles that you had put your hand up towards, it was more about the experience. You weren't putting your hand up because of any, you're going to give me a pay rise of X. It was more around the experience and, putting on different hats. And that's led you to the exec role that you have now, where you've got a view of all of these different things and you understand how it works and how it interrelates because you've had that, I guess, on the ground experience with these things. Talk to me about the level of self-belief or self-confidence needed to propel yourself into these executive leadership roles. Because, I'm just listening to your journey and you start off working at Pizza Hut and you were at uni and you really put in the hours. Like, what's the level of self-confidence you need to say, hey, I'm willing to give this a shot? Come on, give me a shot.
I mean, look, there's a couple of things, right? I mean, there's always a little bit of luck, but luck is a variable you can't control. The variable you can control is hard work and persistence, which is in my case been the 2 things that have worked in my favor. But you do need a bit of inspiration too, right? Because without inspiration, that pulling off the hard work and pulling off the persistence pretty hard too. So in my journey, the couple of people who've been really instrumental is very early in school and stuff. My mum was very hands-on involved with what I did at school and how I did it, etc. So she always had high expectations of me, and that sort of meant that I wanted to fulfill that, and that created a bit of a need for me. And then when I was in Aspect doing MCT training and consulting and so on, I was very satisfied. I was in a reasonable wage. I used to drive a Toyota Celica, beautiful car, nice house. What's the point of changing anything? And then my wife came along and she goes, I think you have more potential than this. And I go, really? She goes, yeah, you're wasting your life. You have a lot more potential than this. You've got this, and this. And she rattled all this stuff off. And I listened to her, and that changed my life. So that was the one inspirational moment, built upon what my mum did early, but then what my wife said at the time. And she was pretty persistent with what she said as well. And then from there on, for me, it became, yes, look, partly I've not always known exactly where I want to get to, but I've known my next step. And then as I became more mature, I actually knew my eventual step as well. No, I wouldn't say there's nothing eventual, by the way. I mean, I knew 3 steps from where I was rather than the 1 step from where I was, right? And I'm never satisfied in a job by being boxed into something that just doesn't give me job satisfaction. So I've always wanted to learn different areas of business, whether it's sales, whether it's product, whether it's technology, whether it's just general management. One of the lessons for me has always been operate one level higher than where you are, which basically means, Kai, if you are my boss, I want to see the world the way you see the world, and then make decisions in your shoes as my manager and say, what would Kai do? That's the question I'd ask myself every time, right? What would he do? Would he, in this moment of time, performance manage this person, or would this moment of time he would not, or would he think of this strategy? Because say if I was a technology manager and you were my general manager, you are also thinking of sales, not just technology. So if I elevate myself to your level, I go, I'm now stopping to think about the architecture that I'm writing in technology, but I'm also thinking about how you're going to sell it. But you're also thinking about how you're going to market it and all of that. So if I'm thinking at your level, your job, I've made your job really easy. And you are now relating to me as your direct report really, really well.
Yeah. And it gives me confidence too, that, hey, if I ever leave, AJ can absolutely do this job because you've already started training for it before you even need to train for it.
I mean, you've got to watch not stepping on people's toes while you do that as well.
Yeah.
Because people get very worried. Okay. And it requires a fine balance, and my balance was very worse before and got better as I matured. But reality is thinking a level up has been a really real key in terms of my career development.
But you've talked about, curiosity and pursuing interest in other areas, not only immediately in your area. You've invested in your education, and over time, you've got a bachelor and master's in engineering from UTS. You're an alumnus at Harvard Business School, and interestingly, an honorary adjunct professor at the UTS Business School. What do you see are the values of learning and education for people and business leaders?
I think it's immense. A lot of people say this, and I'm going to repeat it. It's not a very original statement, but I believe in it. You go to university to learn how to learn. And that's what university teaches you. And that's what it taught me. In terms of when you get into work life, learning on the job is really important. Learning from your peers is really important. Learning from your senior people is really important. So I still learn a lot from everyone. As an example, I mean, I've got a number of direct reports, and I could tell you something that I've learned from each one of them. Each one of them is an individual, and they bring something to the table that I do not bring. And I observe them and I go, that's really interesting. And I don't do that, and they do it. And, you've got to be a sponge, because if you limit your opportunities to just learning through courses and stuff like that, I think you will not do a good job, because unfortunately you might do 1 or 2 weeks a year once you're in workplace of courses, but you're going to do 65 days, or maybe not that, maybe 47 weeks, 48 weeks, right? Of work, and that's a lot of work. One other thing is leadership is not just about work. Leadership is at work, but also at home and also in the community. So if you think you can go home and stop your leadership, or if you go to the community, you can stop it, that's not how leadership works, not in my definition anyway. So leadership is also about what you do, how you behave, what your ethics are, what you stand for.
So I want to switch the topic into people management and recruitment now. And sorry to do this to you, AJ, but I want to bring back a few past articles that you've brought up, because I think they're still very much relevant today. And the one that I'm referring to is this 2016 article that you had written around, hiring for potential or obsession. I'd like to understand what your view is on this particular topic, hiring for potential versus hiring for track record. What's worked for you?
It's even more topical at the moment, because it's a talent-starved market, and it's impossible to find great talent at the moment. There's a shortage of talent in Australia and around the world, especially in the tech space. If you only hire for past track record in a very niche industry, I think it's a massive miss. People often talk about diversity, and this topic relates to diversity. Diversity is not just about color of your skin and your gender and other types of the way we look at diversity. Diversity is also about simply diversity of thinking. And diversity of thinking comes from all of those factors, which include gender and age and number of those things. But diversity also comes from industries that you've worked in. Kodak is a really good example. Remember when Kodak made that choice of let's get another photography person to run Kodak. That was the nail in the coffin for them, isn't it? And what they really needed was someone who was actually not from their industry to run it, to save Kodak, but they actually never did that. And at the moment, the market is very talent starved. But before COVID, when there was a more of a normal, people would go, I'm a banking experience.
Yeah.
I'm a digital company experience, digital experience. I'm an energy company experience, energy. So how are you going to ever change if that's this type? So it comes to potential then, right? If you're going to hire people from different industries and so on who don't necessarily have that track record, then what are you hiring for? Not skill set. You're hiring for potential. So there's always a mix in your workforce of a level of skill set that you need, that because you need to get them up and running quickly. And then there is lots of people who maybe don't have that skill set in the short term, but have a lot of potential to learn that skill set very, very quickly. And perhaps, they say that a good performer outperforms an average performer by 400%. And if you can get that person with that potential to learn in 6 months and then perform at 400% of an average person, your return is a lot higher.
And it's very topical at the moment because, obviously with the pandemic, there's been lots of mobility between industries for people. And even in normal times, employers can often be concerned because it seems like a high risk proposition to hire a person who's come outside of the sector. So you're like, oh, well, are they even going to enjoy the sector? And at the same time, it also feels risky on the candidate's part saying, well, my experience only aligns with this column. And now I'm applying for this. Should I even bother? Because if they're just going to reject me anyway, maybe I should just spend my time there. So I think it's the two parties coming in. What's been your approach at car sales? Have you looked at people from outside the industry?
I don't know if I gave that example in my article or not because I've forgotten. It's been so long. But one of the hires I made was our CTO, came from the energy industry, and we're digital. So hiring someone from the energy industry back then was, a bit strange. And in fact, the recruiter asked me this question. The recruiter said, so, okay, Ajay, we're looking for a CTO. Where should I fish? Do I go to realestate.com? Do I go to Seek? Do I go? And so effectively digital industry. And I said, why would you? I mean, what you've basically now told me, rather than having 1,000 options, I have 5 options, right? Yeah. Why would you do that to me? Why wouldn't you go with 1,000 options and pick the best of the best? So, and that CTO is still here and doing a great job, right? So that's the point.
So just going back to a comment you made earlier, you talked about, the McKinsey research or report on the Great Resignation. And again, sorry to bring back an old article, but it's still very much relevant. And this is from an article you published in IT News. There was the article was around how to hire top talent, but there was a particular quote that you had mentioned, which is the best way to grow your business is to grow your people. And when we're talking about the Great Resignation, people talk about job satisfaction, skills shortage. Now, this quote that you've given, I mean, what have you found to be effective strategies to support and nurture people in an organization so that way you can grow your people?
One of the things we do, Kai, is there always needs to be a healthy balance of bringing external talent and promoting internal talent in, because you don't always want to just have the internal view. But one of the things we try and do very hard is train our people for the next step in their career. And I run this quarterly town hall, and I do it quarterly because, there are too many meetings in our calendars and we don't want to do these things any more frequently, in my view, than that. But I run this quarterly town hall for Carsales Australia, and we put up all the promotions in that town hall. And it is so good to see how many promotions we do every quarter. And I think everyone looks at that and goes, yeah, this is the sort of company I want to work for, because this is where I have the opportunity to grow as an individual and have a career. So it's really good for retention as well. But at the same time, what's to say, again, it comes to potential again, right? What's to say you always have to hire this person that comes from, external, and you buy this skill set ready to go, and you've got this person who has great potential. You just need to give them a little bit of training and mentorship, and you can get them there, right? So, growing people is really important. But I do not want to say that you can do everything internally either. There is a balance. And yes, you do need to bring external people in as well, because that also then grows your internal people, right? Brings this diversity of experience and stops you looking from just inwardly, and you look more outwardly.
Yeah, because there could be things like you said, you haven't considered. They could be a disruptor to your sector because they're applying things that they've learned in another sector, and then that upskills your team as well, and to think a little bit more openly, I guess. Okay. Or any other tips you've got around, supporting and nurturing your people to grow them?
Look, I mean, lots and lots. We could do hours and hours on this, right? But really staying connected is really important, especially in times of COVID, right? Because we're sitting here, everyone's on Zoom, and if you're actually not, and one person can't stay connected themselves. Everyone's got to stay connected.
Yeah. People
will relate more to you if they mean something to you, right? One of the things I do is I used to do this for everyone in the company. I used to have everyone's birthday in my calendar and then wish everyone the birthday. Now the numbers have gone berserk, so I have a smaller number of people in my calendar, and I wish them happy birthday, but it gives me a chance to interact with them, during that time and show them that I care, which I genuinely care, as well. So I think, everyone uses different techniques to do this. But it's really important as a leader that you are connected, and you understand, what's going on with people. Carsales does this thing called donut catch-ups, and during COVID,
Tell me more. Donuts.
During this COVID time, we want. It's not just about me being connected; it's about people being connected to each other as well. A developer to a product manager or a marketing manager or something, right? So effectively, the system randomly picks two people, pairs them up, and sends them a Slack and says, please get connected. You've been chosen randomly. And you do this every fortnight and you just keep going, right? Wow. So that just creates connections in the company. A better connected company will always be a more trusting environment for people to thrive.
Just very quickly, I just want to ask you this question. You sort of touched on it in other parts, but I do feel like I want to ask it again, which is, this is mostly for people leaders who want to nurture and develop their team. What type of experiences do you think help create these breakthrough moments, in particular leadership moments, for people to go from this level to this level? What type of experiences do they need?
I mean, I can only describe it through example. I sort of relate to things when there are examples. So, for me, some of the inflection points are, there was a 360-degree review done on me 10 years ago. In fact, there's one that's just been done, and I'm just in the middle of that now. And I took all of the comments that were given very, very seriously, all of the feedback that was given very, very seriously. And reality is, even 10 years on, I think I've improved some things quite a lot. And there are other things that have only improved by 50%, but not all the way. And I don't believe you can achieve perfection in everything, because, you are the person you are and you're never going to be great at certain things. So, one of the things people say about me is I can often get distracted really easily. And I actually agree with that. And I watch myself to not get distracted. But it's just innate in my nature to think of 10 things. And I get bored by just thinking of the one. But
I can relate.
But I know that that's a problem, and I know that that's an issue that I need to fix, right? And I continue to work on it. So I think understanding yourself is really important. Making sure there's opportunity for people to give you feedback. And if your people trust you, you'll get more feedback. If your people don't trust you, you will not even know that you're an asshole, but you could be the biggest asshole in the world. You wouldn't even know that because often people who are narcissists don't even know that they're narcissists, right? Because they're so full of themselves. If you're not authentic, if you're not humble, you will not have the leadership moments. That's my view. But if you're humble and if you're authentic, and then you're put in a position where you have to manage people, you'll have those moments. And then you'll suddenly go, what did I learn from this? And be a sponge, keep learning. Other moments for me are just when I've been put in a job and, I just have to swim. And then what do you do? And then there's a lot of things that come up, and you discover your shortcomings, but you're honest to yourself, and you work on it. There are times when, being an alumni of HBS has really been helpful. They give you access to mentoring as well, and so on. So there have been times when I've been a bit confused. I've reached out to those mentors and asked them these questions, and it's really good to have them in a separate country, so there's no conflict. Either don't know anyone who I know, and I can be really honest with them and ask them a question and ask them to help me out, or listen to one of the webinars that HBS is running on a topic that I'm struggling with.
You've spoken about, confidence to innovate. You've talked about trust in terms of leadership, and that way your direct reports or team members and colleagues can give you feedback, and the importance that it has, authentic leadership as well. How do you foster trust in a company, and what's worked really well in your experience?
Look, for me, trust is simply about authenticity. It's not about not pretending to be someone that you're not. I feel that over a period of time, I've got a lot better at that. But partly, I feel that if your manager and your leader and your general leadership in the company gives you the space to be more authentic, you end up with a more authentic workforce. It's a leadership thing. And if you don't have authenticity in leadership, you wouldn't have authenticity in the company either. If the leader is always pretending and people are scared about, X, Y, Z and led by fear, then authenticity gets lost. And I think it feeds directly into people's engagement scores and EOS scores and so on. Authentic leaders tend to, in my belief, I don't have any research on this, but I tend to believe they would get higher engagement scores because, we're not bulletproof. We're all human beings. Everyone expects us to be human beings. So there is nothing bad in showing our true self and saying, yeah, I'm good at this and I'm not good at this. And, please help me with this. And even if you're a leader standing in front of the company, acknowledging that is quite good. So I don't know if you saw, there was another article I wrote on vulnerability somewhere in there, but that.
Well, we'll link that. We'll link that because I think that's part of being an authentic leader is having moments where you can be vulnerable and people can see that, because like you said, we're all humans.
So to me, authenticity is the key to building trust.
And so, AJ, before we wrap up, we just want to take you through the fast 5 questions. Are you ready for this?
Sure.
What was your first job?
First job was Pizza Hut.
What's something interesting that's not on your CV?
I ran marathons.
And what advice would you give your 18-year-old self?
I think I wouldn't give any advice. If anything, I'd say have a bit more fun.
What book is a must-read or what movie is a must-watch?
The book, this is a Tony Hsieh book called Delivering Happiness. That is, I think, a must-read for any business leader. And movie, The Intern. I really like that movie. Robert De Niro, and that sort of really resonated with me around age diversity and so on. So yeah, those two.
What's a job for the future that doesn't exist today?
A drone navigator, perhaps.
All right. Well, yeah. No, we've had some wild ideas on this one. I think the last one we had was, a space agent, and that's coming more and more. So, AJ, thank you so much for coming on the show, and thank you for being our lucky last guest for 2021.
Thank you, Kai. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Today's guest was Ajay Bhatia from Carsales Australia, the leading online marketplace for cars, trucks, motorcycles and boats. We got insight into AJ's migrant experience and how that has shaped his leadership and entrepreneurship journey. You can connect with AJ via LinkedIn, and if you want to learn more about car sales, you can visit their website. This was our last episode for 2021, as we'll be taking a break until March 2022. I just want to take this moment and thank all of our guests, the Verify Now team, and especially the Social Wave team for helping us produce this podcast series. If you've enjoyed season 1 of the HR Think Tank, we'd love it if you could share this podcast series with your network. We can't wait to share more episodes in the new year. And if you've got any feedback or suggestions, please let me know. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thanks for listening to the HR Think Tank with Kai No. We'd love it if you could subscribe and share our podcast with your network. As always, the resources and links mentioned will be included in the show notes and posted on the Verify Now website, verifynow.com.au.